Going live. It's happening. It says we're live. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for waiting. It isn't point in progress without technical issues. I'm, of course, running this on a dumpster truck, so it's okay. We're here. We're ready. We're going to talk X-Men 97 in just a second. Before we do that, let's get this show on the road. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream. This, of course, is going to be one of our first big point-in-progress live streams, where we are moving away from our traditional format of the podcast and going into doing, of course, live streams, which, makes sense. It's going to be fantastic. Of course, I have some wonderful people here. First of all, you might know them as my co-host on MC University. Sly, how are you doing?
Doing great. I'm so glad to be back with you. It's just you and me for the Pip crew here today. You know, we kicked out all the Canadians. Frank's off killing a man. You know, it's going to be a great time.
Yes.
Just you and me hanging out with a very special guest.
That's right. Of course, you speak to them on the regular basis over there at Thirsty Thursdays. JJ Watch, how you doing, Jay? JJ, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty all right, you know, living life like Larry Boy, as I always say. It's great to be here. It's great to join in on the conversation and kind of reunite the little Electra fam that we had going for a little bit. So
my God.
That was exciting. So it's good to be here.
Yes, which, by the way, funny enough, as we're talking, Kind of Funny just did their Electra in review, which is hilarious. So I'll watch that a little bit later. But yeah, today I'm happy to have everyone here in a sort of semi bringing back MCU, even though we could have planned that better. But it's fine. It's an MCU-esque show that we could definitely dive into. So I'm very much happy to have everyone here. Of course, we were talking about Marvel Animation's X-Men 97, which is released over, of course, throughout the year. It's a semi-sequel series to the original X-Men animated series from the early 90s. I, of course, am pretty huge fan of the original. I know that, Sly, this was your first time. Just a little bit. Sly, this is your first time actually watching, I believe, the animation at all. Is that true?
Correct. I have never seen the original show. I just watched this show over the past couple days. And, you know, I'm ready to dive in. I'm so excited. I have so many questions for you, Mario. I hope you can answer them.
I'll try my best. Obviously, it's been a while since I have watched the original X-Men 92 show, but it has been nice sort of catching up and enjoying this series for new fans and for old ones alike, like myself. But yeah, I'm just happy to talk about this. And of course, JJ, I heard in the pre-show you said that this is sort of your COVID watch. This was something you watched right when it dropped on Disney Plus.
Yeah, so it's like a couple months into COVID, and Disney Plus was like, we have to pull whatever we have to put on this new streaming platform. And I came across it, and I had remember watching episodes when I went to like Cece's Pizza as like a kid.
Nice.
And it would be on the TV, and I was like, this is like nostalgic and might bring me joy. So I binged it all in the middle of the night, like just in the middle of COVID. And so it was fun to like, when this sequel series came out with last year, it was fun to be like, this is like something that like there's nostalgia, but also like it's good to revisit and kind of like continue.
Yeah, and then when they announced this revival of the X-Men, I lost my shit because I didn't think that this would be a possibility, let alone the fact that now I have a whole new batch of stories to tell. And they cited that there will be multiple seasons of this. Like, it just wasn't a dream. I remember, it's funny enough, actually, they released the X-Men 97 Assembled video that basically tells you the backstory of how the project came to be, how the original show sort of started. And then they actually have one guy on there that's like, I got into this show because I got the VHS from like a Pizza Hut, like sort of collectible, which was a VHS tape. And that was my tape that I have, and I still have it. It's somewhere in one of my boxes. It is, of course, a copy of the first episode, Night of the Sentinels, which damn you for not putting it the second episode on that one tape. You have to have an actual other tape to complete the story. But thank God for Disney Plus, so I can actually go ahead and revisit all those episodes. But then I watched regularly, obviously, when it was on Fox channel for me, when it was out live on television, which was awesome. But then just sort of over the years, it just sort of comes on certain channels, and then it disappeared, and now here we're back with a new series. So I'm very excited to talk to you about you. Sly, of course, your first major introduction was when we did MCU University in the first place, where we watched all of the X-Men movies up to this point. So this must have been somewhat of a crash course. You already got all the information you needed, right?
For the most part. The first thing I noticed about this show was when those first credits played, I was like, holy shit, there are so many characters to follow in this show. And I had no idea how they were going to handle that many storylines. And they made some interesting choices in how they wove it all together, like only focusing on like 3 to 5 like characters throughout these like A, B, C, D plots or whatever across this first season. And so like I knew the like core like X-Men from the movies that we watched.
Yes.
But honestly, the only reason I knew most of the characters in the show is a little video game called Marvel Snap. There were like so many times where I'd be like, oh, I know what card that is, like what they do in the game. But yeah, I don't know anything about like their backstory, their comic origins, anything about them, but I can tell you what they do in Marvel Snap. So that's good enough for me.
I mean, that's one way to know the backstory / history of a characters is what it does with different cards in your deck. So similar thing in here. Obviously, there's a lot of team ups, a lot of awesome like moves that came together. So that's real exciting. But yeah, I wanted to just talk a little briefly about the history of the show. Obviously, it came out, of course, earlier this year. It was created by Bo DeMaio, who, if you watch that X-Men 97 Assembled, you would not know that because he's not present throughout that documentary whatsoever. But of course, there are some other creators that brought the show to life, so thank you to all of them as well. This brings back some of the original cast from the original animated series, while also going ahead and recasting some famous roles. Some characters are actually voiced by other people that played other roles, like for instance, the original Gambit is actually Cable on this version of the show, which I thought was interesting. They actually got someone else to play Gambit on the show. But yeah, and then sadly, of course, some members have passed away, and some new voice actors are coming in to fill in those roles and give them life. So very excited to hear about that. But before we get started, I do want to, at the very least, say thank you everyone for watching. We're of course doing this new thing here at Point in Progress, where we are live streaming different types of content, including us talking about movies, TV shows, but then we're going to be doing live game let's plays, as well as like some possible reviews and live streams in the future. So keep it locked here at Point in Progress Live. We're doing something different, and we're very excited for the future. So I at least wanted to bring that back up because it's important to us. So again, thank you so much for being here in the chat. If you're here, if you have any questions, please let us know as well. But I'm gonna go ahead and start with our guest. And I, as someone who is a fellow person who's grew up with the show or have seen the show through our lives, JJ, what did you think of X-Men 97?
Oh, I had a great time. I thought it was like just a perfect example of bringing back an older show in like a reboot sequel series. Like that is so popular right now.
Yes.
And like whenever it happens, it's always a big question of just like, well, why? Like, why are we doing this? Is creating this thing worth it? Is it adding something to my experience of the first story? Is it changing the way that I see the original story? Or is it doing it in such a better way? Like, has technology and our ability to storytell grown so much that it is worth retelling this story or continuing this story? So it has to do like one of those three things in order to, like, I feel like kind of ways to justify its existence. in like this capitalist landscape of like we're just gonna keep pushing out content. Um, and I think it kind of did it in almost all, like it hit almost all three barriers, or all three goals. Um, it does add something new. It continues, it picks up where the old story left off, and it um, allows us to, you know, keep going. It kind of redefines our first experience because that show was created in the 90s, and now we're looking back at what happened in the 90s with a 2024 lens and seeing how things have changed and not changed. And then technology has gotten so much better. There is a thing where I think it does an amazing job of recreating the style, but there are some moments it doesn't get perfectly, and there are some things it can't accomplish because just the skills of that type of animation have just disappeared to time. But there are also some really cool like fight sequences that would not have been accomplished 30 years ago. So yeah, it hit all of those goals for me, and it allowed me to have a really, really great time watching it.
That was definitely what struck me with the show, is that how it was able to balance of people that are a massive fan of the original series, but how it can balance with sort of the how we're bringing modern sensibilities to somewhat of an older time, bringing the fact that it's 97, that it's a different time frame from when even the original show was. So how are they going to adapt that time frame? And I think they do a pretty expert job of allowing the political nature of the show feel fresh of within that time, in obviously an alternate universe where mutants exist, but be very, very present of like, this is clearly talking about, Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ, like all these different things that matter to people, and all these things that, people feel like of, the other, they very much had a focus on it and really, really showed like right off the rip, we're doing like January 6th references. Like we're going crazy with it, and then allowing it to actually give it a context to the story and make it actually feel fresh and new. Sly, I want to hear your perspective. Obviously, someone who has started getting into the X-Men. This is now, I think, a series specifically made for our next generation. What is your thoughts on this?
Yeah, obviously I didn't have the context of the original, so I don't know what aspects of the show are new and fresh, and which are like references to invoke that nostalgia of the people who know and love the previous show. I was surprised by how wordy it seemed. It seems like there was a lot of talking. There was a lot of like characters just chatting. And I don't think that's a criticism. It was just an observation, and it was a little surprising to me. We do have some pretty like awesome like fight scenes, like you mentioned, throughout the whole show. I feel like we get like one good like fight scene at least every episode. Um, but it really was so narratively driven. Like I said, it was a lot of talking, it was a lot of characters either explaining things, explaining their perspectives, or trying to convince somebody to see something a different way. And I thought it was really interesting when you take a property like the X-Men and what they represent and what they were designed to represent in our society and in our world, and use it as a way to model how to hold these conversations, and gives us a sort of framework and reference and language to have these conversations with the people in our lives. I think that's really important, and I think it's something you can definitely take from this show in general. But yeah, I guess those are like my technical impressions. I could definitely see they were trying to emulate a more nostalgic like animation style, while also making it a little bit fresher and like more approachable for a modern audience. And I think for that, I thought it was well done. I didn't like, nothing really took me out of it. It seemed like they had a vision of the way they wanted to adapt the style, and they accomplished it.
Yeah, I feel very much that they found a happy blend of, yes, keeping it traditional with the original series, which did have a lot of just of characters talking to each other, either being interpersonal stuff or, you know, conflict with the world around them. What I did love is that they still kind of kept true to that. And with the, you know, with the fighting and all the, you know, the choreography of it kind of went harder on like the anime style in a lot of ways. There's definitely a lot of crazy fights that happen that you just didn't see back in 92. Like there's a lot of frames that are obviously repeats of previous episodes and stuff like that. Like they tried what they did with the original, but I feel like given the 10 episodes that they were given, they definitely had a lot of leeway to like, okay, let's make this a rememberable moment. You know, like everyone knows the, you know, the fastball special with like Colossus and with Wolverine. Well, then, let's do something new with like Wolverine and Gambit, or let's do, you know, some other crazy stuff. So like, JJ, you got some thoughts?
How you really feel about that?
Yeah.
Oh wow, I don't think that moment was just a wow, I can still be attracted to cartoon characters kind of moment where it was just like
So valid.
Watching that moment of just like in general over the entire series, there's just the way that they combined and used like teamwork, and it's like both in a storytelling way and in the animation in the fight scenes was just so impeccable. And it was like things that are like should be common sense that I've only ever thought of, not even in my wildest fan fiction. Like the Gambit Wolverine moment was just such a delightful touch. And also just I love seeing Gambit just like get on Wolverine's back to like light up. It was just like a great moment. I was like, yep. Mm-hmm. All I want. That's all I want.
Just turning, you know, Wolverine into a bomb that he then obviously, you know, it's off screen, but Wolverine blew up. Like Wolverine just exploded.
Good.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Speaking of storylines, this show has many a storyline, and I think we just have to go through them piece by piece. But Carlos in the chat is asking about our thoughts on the Madeline Pryor storyline. And my first question for you, Mario, is how the fuck did I know that name and know nothing about what the storyline was going to be? Because that name came up and I was like, I know that name, but I could not place it. Like, why do I know that name?
I honestly, it's never in the movies, right? They don't go into this. I'm not sure how it might have been in some fan fiction that you read. It's possible that Madeline Pryor, because let's be honest, like that storyline is horny and also bizarre. And, you know, we'll get into it. There's a lot of fun stuff that they obviously, actually, I don't think Madeline Pryor.
I don't think Madeline Pryor is in Marvel Snap at all.
I don't think so at all. So that's why, when you say that, like you heard that name before, you must have heard it in some fun stuff because this storyline, which I guess from what I understand, that episode alone is like years of comics just by itself that they, you know, have to go and sort of like in the deeper detail that I feel like they did pretty well in just 40 to 50 minutes, which is pretty shocking. Like they were able to handle that whole twist right off of a cliffhanger, which the X-Men series originally was very much episodic and had cliffhangers. There would be episodes that you would watch that when you tuned in the next week, it didn't matter because the episodes were out of order. So you couldn't see the ending of your episode. Like that's how it was.
I love that. I love the good old days when cartoons aired completely out of order. When I was going through Batman the Animated Series earlier, and they were talking about like canon order versus release order, the first couple seasons of the Clone Wars are a complete shit show. I think that's like such a funny like nostalgia moment. It's like never being able to watch cartoons in the order they were created or intended to be watched.
I'll tell you, there are many nights that I've watched like the beginnings or middles of like the Apocalypse sort of like arc, and I've never seen it finished. Like there have been times where like I've seen that goddamn dude so many times and I've never seen the end of it. Like I remember seeing like, oh man, like Morph was which, by the way, they don't really go into it too much, but Morph is a very interesting character that I would love to break down with you guys, because Morph has been one of my favorite characters for a long time, mostly because of that VHS, but also the fact that he gets somewhat of they get somewhat of a shine in this series. I'm so glad that they get a nice little character moments here. But before we get to that, yes, all the storylines. So we can go ahead episode to episode if you want, since I have a breakdown pretty much listing here. So there's 10 episodes. The first episode, which I believe is this is hold on. I'll just go ahead and read this quick summary because it's actually pretty small. This, of course, takes place a year after the Charles Xavier supposedly was assassinated. But of course, he went to this like alien like paradise somewhere with the Shi'ar. Which, if you didn't watch the series to know that, man, the show also didn't try to tell you that until a little bit later.
Another one of my questions was like, why the fuck did Charles fuck off to an alien planet?
He was very much in love with the little alien lady,
All right.
and then that's that whole sort of arc. But basically, they're supposed to be the X-Men being sanctioned by the United Nations, and that sort of like begins sort of the what was it, the junkyard in Sierra, where they start doing the whole like. Oh my god, I'm forgetting a lot, and I've just watched the show like not that long ago. Trask, right? They're trying to figure out where Trask's gone with this Mass Troll Supercomputer stuff.
Trask.
Yes. So essentially, the first episode is them trying to get him to stop him, and then the end of the episode is with Magneto shows up, right? Ultimately, this was a very fun introduction back to the X-Men. The one thing I do want to point out, and Carlos, if you're still in the chat, oh my god, and Sly, I've mentioned this 1,000 times in the X-Men MCU episodes. Holy shit, is Cyclops fucking a man? The man in this one. I am so happy.
Wait, hold on, because one of my first notes, I was keeping like a loose note taking as I was going through.
Yeah.
But like, this is the first and only time that I have ever been like, I see why Mario loves Cyclops so much. I was like, I get it. It finally clicked. I was like, okay, this dude is pretty cool, actually. And because this whole time I was like, why do you love this motherfucker so deeply? I get it. He's cool here.
To me, my X-Men. Oh my god. When he does the first fight, I think it's in the warehouse where he's fighting the sort of January 6er Trask people. And he does this weird like he uses his blast to like move himself. I was like, that's sick. Like that is the sickest thing.
Where he like jumps back and then blasts himself across. Brilliant.
Just like, there's so many wonderful things. Obviously, him being the leader of the X-Men, him having that awesome moment, him jumping out of the plane and just blasting into the earth to like lower him rise. Like that is some like Captain America Winter Soldier shit. Like that is like all those like little tinsy little character moments that just made him awesome. And then you found out that he was two-timing his wife with a clone.
To be fair, he didn't realize
he did not realize it.
Clone.
But
Nor did she.
Nor did she, which was, a whole bag of worms in itself. But yeah, I mean, God, there's so much to talk about. Because now that I even just said this episode, that I'm thinking about all the Magneto UN stuff. I'm thinking about obviously the lead up to Genosha. Like there's so much to go to. I mean, where do y'all want to go? Because fuck it. Let's
break it down by characters. Let's go through the whole Cyclops, Madeline Pryor, Jean Grey, Cable, Nathan. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about family.
Let's talk about family. Okay, so the baby mama drama. Yeah, so what are your thoughts? Because I actually knew very little of that story. So that was also a fun surprise, is like, as someone who's watched and seen other X-Men material, there's still stuff to be surprised about. And that was something that I was still surprised about. I knew that Nathan obviously was going to be Cable. Like I knew that, like all that. I just didn't know the machinations of how he came to be. What are your thoughts on the Madeline Pryor reveal, Sly?
Yeah, I spent the whole time trying to figure out where the fuck I knew that name. I could not for the life of me figure it out. I don't know, something about the way they kind of like mind meld and they don't really know whose memories is whose makes me be like, okay, like they're like, I don't know, they're copies of each other. They exist in tandem. The whole like cheating aspect, whatever, who cares? He loves Jean regardless of which Jean it is. That's fine. Multiverse bullshit aside, whatever. The bigger reveal to me personally is I did not know who Cable was other than his card in Marvel Snap. And so that reveal of him being like the Nathan that was infected and then sent to the future to be cured. I guess we could talk about Bishop here because he shows up, he fucks off, and then we never hear from him again.
Until the last episode, I think.
Until like a
Like
hint
the
of him
very
in the last
last scene.
episode.
Yeah. All right, man. What you doing? Like, what's going on with that? And hopefully season 2 will explain that, or he'll be more involved for sure. Yeah, it's funny because, you know, he's added God, there's so much genius about the show. He's added to the title card to the very beginning of the show, right? They actually have like the team as it currently is, and he's in that one. And then he leaves, and then he's out of the title card, and the title card changes.
I love when a title card changes. I love when title cards and intros just change randomly in a show. It's chef's kiss. It's perfect.
They did it every episode. They did it every episode. Whenever something major happens, yeah. God, yeah.
Keep me up to date.
But yeah,
it's the details, just the little details.
Yes. JJ, your thoughts on the Madam Pryor storyline?
So I was aware of the twist before I saw it. Not because I am the biggest Emma Frost fan. I love Emma Frost with all my heart. And when you like read Emma Frost and you like spend a lot of time with Emma Frost, of course, like it's not just Madeline Pryor and Jean Grey. Scott Summers is also having like a telepathic psychic link with Emma Frost too. And there's a whole other cheating scandal with her too. And they all have kids together. Someone has kids with another person. They're all telepathically. And she's got her own clones that she has to deal with too. And her own children that are all identical, that are also identical to her. So like I was aware of Madeline Pryor beforehand. I was very impressed with like how you said that that's years of comics that they just pushed into like so few minutes of television. That's what I was most impressed by. I was just like, they really just like hit the major story beats and we're done. We're not even going to think about them very much. We're just going to hit them and we're going to move on.
I'm going to think about them until we kill her off.
And then we will think about them like constantly, and we will reference them constantly. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good. What surprised me was that it worked even if someone didn't know anything about the X-Men, because like you're meeting a character and then within like 20 minutes of like seeing this character, you find out this character is actually a clone that didn't exist, and you're like, I what? But it somehow still worked. So I was also impressed by that. I thought it was really like a really fun choice to just like, because that's I think the second major twist. The first twist is Magneto showing up at the end of the first episode. So like, it's like the second major twist of the 10 episodes, and you're just like, wow, okay, this is what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the fact that it made you fall, especially in that episode where the first twist, was Magneto shows up and is now actually going to take on Charles's vision of the X-Men. There's obviously some tension between him and Cyclops. The fact that they've had a history of many episodes of a previous show, as well as history of comics of like, you've been the bad guy for a long time. Like, how can we put that trust in you? And then there is obviously then the relationship between Jean and Cyclops, to where they're having their birth of their child is happening in the show, and you're having that moment to then get the rug pulled that it was actually not Jean, it was someone else. It's just like, whoa. Like,
And like the way they thread the storylines throughout the whole episode of this like non-acceptance of this discrimination for like the whole scene is going on, we're having the baby, it's dramatic, people are fighting in other places, like things are exploding, and then also to have the doctor refuse to deliver the baby, and for that to just like be such a like brief moment but such an impactful moment that it is then left referenced later, and then for us to then immediately get the rug pulled out, like, psych, that's not Jean. She's off being tortured somewhere else. And so she's back now, I guess.
It's wild. Not only to mention that Cyclops was in a massive fight with the January Sixers and then pulled away for the birth of his child. Like, there's so much that is packed within the first 2 episodes that, oh my God, there's still 8 more to go.
Waste no time. This show doesn't waste a second of its screen time.
No, it doesn't waste a second. And I feel like every time it does introduce a new character, you get the feel for who they are, and then you're either with them or you're without or against them, and then you carry on. And there's also change within those characters too. Like, I was hesitant about Magneto, but the way that they showed his character throughout, and we're going to talk about him next because
Can we talk about my boy? We're going there next, right?
Yeah, let's talk about Magneto. Holy fucking shit. There's so much that is so beautiful and wonderful and scary and terrifying about that character. Sly, break it down.
I love him so much. Okay, so my next what the fuck moment question is Magnus. Why are we calling him Magnus? And then like at the very end we finally get like a Eric Magnus Lenscher like from Charles, and I'm like, okay, so it's a middle name, but like why don't we just call my boy Eric? That was my first question.
I think it has something to do with, so in the original series, they kind of teeted the line of the Holocaust aspects of the character. They definitely didn't shy away, but it was very much like rear view, like this season, like, no, we're bringing it up. Right?
Oh, it was directly referenced multiple times.
And I believe that's what I read, that's where that's from, where it's something from the original series that they brought in. Or Magnus, I think, has existed as something a part of his character, but you're right. Like, we know him as Eric, we know him as Michael Fassbender, we know him as Ian McKellen, of course. But like, this is a character that's been established for many, many years. But ultimately, yeah.
So I'm just gonna call him Eric, and we know who I'm talking about.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, we show up. They come off this big battle, and they return to the mansion, and they're going through Charles' last will and testament, where he bequeaths everything to his lover and enemy.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
I was about to say, I was like, is it gay to leave your kids and your house to your best friend, who's sometimes your mortal enemy?
Yeah.
I think so.
I think so. And so Mr. Magneto shows up to lead the team and fulfill Charles' vision of the future, even though it is contradictory to his own. And he's there, he's making progress, connecting with the team. They are helping humans. And then the UN really wants to bring him in on trial, and he gets to have a great monologue where he says, like, I am doing this for the love of my life. Like, I am fulfilling his vision. And then the world says, fuck you, and bombs the mutant nation of Genosha. I keep wanting to call it Genovia. That's wrong.
Wait, we're doing Princess Diaries now? Is that what we're doing?
Princess Diaries, yeah.
Anne
Um,
Hathaway would have defeated the Sentinel. Like,
It Hathaway would have. But yeah, I think what they did with Eric's character throughout this is so interesting to have him feel this sort of obligation to continuing Charles's vision, even though it's so contradictory to his own morals and ideals. And for him to like give it the good old college try, and for humanity to rear its ugly head, and him to be like, nah, fuck that. I've seen like what they do to people they perceive as other, as threats. Um, and he's like, I love the way they handled that. I love the shot of when he's like locked up and you see the like shackles and the tattoo, and for that to be like such a powerful imagery of like, we understand the history and lineage of this character, and he understands what it's like to live through a tragedy, a genocide like this, and what can he do to prevent or stop the furthering of that from reoccurring? What can we take from that history and reapply it? And with the current state of the world, some of these stories need to be told.
Funny that you bring that up. Obviously, when the show, so I looked, it was March 20th when it kicked off. Definitely watching the episodes that I'm about to talk about here in a second was crazy because we're very much living this right now with Israel Palestine, and it was kind of tough to watch during that time. But like, so what I'm referring to obviously is that yes, there is a part where there is going to be a nation for mutants, that mutants can thrive and survive, and
Sovereign nation, created from like, that was their like, I don't know, it was their Australia, like their slave camp that then became like its own
yes,
sovereign nation, and then obviously is like completely obliterated.
yeah. Which how did you feel about that coming about? That big event, did you see that coming for this seemingly children's television show, which is very isn't. It's very much, hey, this is definitely for young adults / for people that watch this religiously. So, what are your thoughts on that big moment?
It was episode 5, right? The end of episode 5 was
Yes.
that moment. And so just how I watched it is I planned to watch like the first 5 episodes Monday, the second 5 episodes yesterday. I got through a couple episodes yesterday. I finished the last like 2.5 today. It's fine. So I was like determined to stop after episode 5, and for that to be the ending point was the destruction of Genosha. Gave me like a little bit of time to sit on it. And I'm so thankful that that's how I planned out my watch, because I'm assuming that's the holy shit episode that everybody was like blowing up on the internet a while back about. I did not see it coming, but afterwards I understood like why they were choosing to tell that story and how it was approached. I think it was really interesting. I had this conversation and this thought back when the Avatar: The Last Airbender live action show
Okay.
came out. I was thinking about like my childhood and the state of the world I was growing up in and the media that was popular. So I'm thinking like specifically the Iraq Afghanistan wars that like the US was heavily engaging with and perpetrating throughout that area of the world, and how Avatar: The Last Airbender, a story about a genocide of a nation and one nation trying to take over the rest of the world to spread their greatness, which was very similar narrative to what the US was telling its population at the time, and Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Those were like the two big children's media properties at that time, and how it gave us a way to think about the wars and to talk about the wars that were currently happening in the world. So I thought it was really interesting that Avatar: The Last Airbender came back when it did, and then to then have this show right afterwards also telling this story that it's threading the line between like showing this like genocide of a people in a sovereign nation while also directly referencing the Holocaust nature of the storylines of these characters and how they weave that together in a time where we are talking about those ideas, right? We are talking about what it means to have a sovereign nation, what it means to look at your past and want a place where you will not be attacked for who you are, and then also looking at the genocide that is happening in that area against Palestine at the same time, and to have a show like this thread all of those storylines and kind of give us a starting point to connecting that to the real world, I thought was really interesting.
JJ, your thoughts?
That was so beautifully said, and I don't know where else to go from there. I guess speaking of like Magneto into the Genosha genocide, it was for me that moment was just kind of like Sly said earlier. It was like, oh, this is the oh shit moment that everyone's talking about. And I think story wise, they did something really interesting and really smart. Was they connected it to also we see this huge destruction and we see Magneto's like him like he's given the whole college try and like his moment of breaking. We see like we actively are watching like Charles's dream die. And in that moment, we also see Gambit make his big sacrifice, and like connecting all of those things in one moment is really smart structurally speaking on how to tell the story, because like Magneto and Gambit are already like linked through Rogue already in the storyline that they were telling. Leading up to those episodes, and you know, like there's like this mesh of the four of them, of the romantic love between Charles and Magneto and Rogue and Gambit, and like it all crumbles together in this one
square.
moment. We love a love square, and
I think this
watching
is more like a starburst. Like those lines are all over the place.
all over the place. But we're watching the last, like Magneto is watching the last bit of Charles die, and Rogue is watching the Gambit die, and Gambit is like they're both, and Gambit and Rogue are watching what they have also die in that one moment.
Time, we're watching Charles be forced to choose to lose his memories of his X-Men, and then in his like mind palace sees the destruction. So he's watching like his like dreams die at the same time as he's being forced to choose if he remembers or forgets them.
And so we have this huge epic genocide, this genocide happening that we're watching on screen, and it's but because we haven't spent so much time, we've barely spent half an episode in this location. We're not attached to this location as and to this group of people because we just haven't spent time in the story with them. So by weaving it into the personal things that we have been following up into that moment makes it hit like double hard, because we're both watching something that is paralleling to what's happening in our world right now, and we're watching a storyline that we've been invested in these characters, and it all culminates into this one moment. And I love me some Gambit. So Gambit, they picked the one that was going to hit the hardest.
Yeah, they that was wild. perspective also to bring Gambit sort of into this conversation, and Rogue specifically. This series, at least the original animated series, is my introduction to Gambit, and to be honestly, my only canon to Gambit is this series, because he sounded like the coolest man in the room. He was in love with the coolest, hottest, beautiful woman I've ever seen in Rogue. And then for him to also, that crop top in episode 1 was fantastic. Oh my God.
Crop.
Cooking pancakes wherever he was cooking.
Sometimes all you need is two hot Southern bisexuals looking at each other and going, exactly.
They get it.
Right?
And that's Rogue and Gambit.
That's, yeah. I've had a soft spot for that design of the character, that just the voice, that person, like that is my Gambit. And whenever we got to X-Men Origins and we had Gambit on there, I was like, I'm glad that we have some representation. It wasn't my Gambit, but we had something. But yeah, so to have my Gambit, this is how I feel about it, is my Gambit, but my heroes sacrificing themselves in a way that just was so as dramatic as it was. And for him to say that last line, not only will I remember it, I will remember that for the rest of my life, which this is why the episode's titled Remember It. But yeah, the passing of Gambit, just doing the coolest fucking thing on the planet to save everyone. It was just wild. But to sit there in that moment of experiencing what's happening in the real world, watching the episode, like, I don't think I cried as hard as I did since like fucking like Up. What I mean, like tears just like going down. Like I was like in shock and awe of like characters that, you know, they were introduced earlier in the season, like Leech and stuff like that, like the Morlocki characters. I remember them from the original series. So I have those past histories of like those characters being around, and obviously Marvel Snap, thank you for bringing Leech and everything.
Again, Marvel Snap.
Yeah. But when like Magneto's like
I know Leech.
when Magneto's doing that like force field thing and like Leech is there and he makes that promise to it, it's the most devastating thing.
And then when that promise gets brought back up in the later episodes, where he's like, I watched like the hope like die out of his eyes as I promised you and it was going to be okay.
God. And then it just culminating and ending with the crater, with Gambit laying there and Rogue holding him and saying, I can't feel you.
Oh, hurts. That hurts so much.
Mm-hmm.
And just that being the moment where she's finally like actually touching him is also, it's just like, how dare you? How dare this show? Just
God.
And especially since that entire episode was watching Gambit watch Rogue and Magneto touch. And then the final moment where we finally see Rogue and Gambit touch in this series
Because he's
is
dead.
when he's dead. It's just like they really play up every detail. And again, these one-liners that we're talking, remember, like it doesn't waste any dialogue, and it makes sure every piece of dialogue, every moment on screen is important, building to something else, and that there's going to like everything is going to come back around in a way that's meaningful and important, even things that you don't think are going to be.
Yeah. Say like my one problem with this whole rigmarole is my first exposure to Rogue was as a child, and so it was really hard to like not like my visceral reaction, especially talking about her like past with Magneto, like before they reconnect. Me the whole time I'm like, sir, that is a child. Like that is a teen at best, and I was so uncomfortable. And to be like, she's an adult the whole time.
That's so funny.
Anna Paquin really changed things for us. It's changed the perception of Rogue for better or worse.
Better or for worse. Hey, remember True Blood? Anyways, but yeah. But Yes, it's so funny you say that, Sly, because Rogue for me, the very first time I ever saw them was in shopping mall, shopping with Storm in Night of the Sentinel. So like I see her as an adult, but then yes, of course, there's the movies that colored the perception of what that character was for years. So I understand your play. I will say, like, I actually was not very much aware of the relationship that she has with Magneto in the comics, which apparently this is stuff that it's where it comes from. So when it was going on, I felt a little betrayed of like, oh, but Gambit, my precious Gambit. So, you know, definitely something. I did want to go over to one of our other best couples on the show that I think is underrated and needs a shout out. I'm of course talking about Morph and Wolverine.
Okay, we have some other couples that I'm really excited to talk about. But Morph and Wolverine, let's hear it. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, that is some day one shit when it comes to the original Night of the Sentinels cartoon. The whole purpose of Morph in the original cartoon was they were set to just die, to be a character that dies in the first episode, and that shows the stakes that the character, you know, that the show's going to have going forward. Is like anything could possibly happen, even if it was a character that they kind of semi came up with / is in the comics, but like, you know, doesn't have a huge storyline. But that character, people got attached to that character so much that they end up bringing them back later in later seasons under the influence of, you know, Mr. Sinister. And then now we have this new iteration of the character, which is not necessarily new. It's more of an evolution of the character, is the fact that this is a gender fluid character. This is a non-binary character that can at will change whoever they are, because that is, you know, their ability to, for them to continue that relationship that they have with Wolverine, and definitely in this show seems in a larger capacity than they would in the original series. I was very much there for and happy for, up until when the like last thing Morph says to Logan is like, I love you. Oh, I loved it.
Love a non-binary icon. We love queer love. And yeah, devastating.
Which, by the way, did not know that in later comics, it's very much inferred that Wolverine, Jean Grey, and Cyclops are in a throuple.
They are such in a throuple.
Isn't that what we've been saying all along?
Yeah.
Why don't they all get together?
And they basically do.
Every episode
they live together.
They live together.
No, I love that. Thank God they finally got their shit together. And there's, because you know, half of, you know, Logan's feelings for Scott are just wanting to fuck it out, right? Like,
oh my God.
Well, it's also kind of interesting. They don't really touch on it in this show, but they do kind of have one moment where I was like, oh, they're kind of touching on it, where Logan is talking to Wolverine and is like, don't break her, like when he's like, Wolverine is like not dying but dying, and Logan's like, don't break her heart. And it's like, and also there's the other moment of when Jean kisses Logan. Forgot about that moment. So much happens in this show. It's really hard to follow. But they do kind of like hint that this, not hint, but like, you know, the love triangle between Logan, Scott, and Jean is like, the tale is old as time. It's been on forever. And it's something also that happened in the original. But like, it's the way that they do it in this one is much more, it's not the main focus of their story. It's Scott's involved in another love triangle in this one. But there is a little, like, just the moments of them, everyone acknowledging that, like, everyone has or specifically that Jean has feelings for both of them, and then they do it in a very, like, respectful way. Like, it's not...
Jean and Madeline have feelings.
for both, yeah, Jean and Madeline. Really, they're just, like... It's not a star, it's like a dodecahedron, and half of the people are the same.
Correct. Yep, absolutely. You nailed it.
Um,
Oh,
maybe just a word cloud would help in this. I don't know. But then again, then you have the Morph Wolverine romance that I think my favorite moment was when they started fight. Like he threw him a 6-pack of beer up in the tree when Wolverine was trying to like ignore him. Um, and they were like, they threw up the 6-pack and then Logan sliced it and then they started like,
All right. Okay. So first of all, Forge and Storm, holy shit. But also, Jubilee and Sunspot, holy shit. Both of these storylines have my whole heart. All of these characters, I fucking adore. I want so much more of all of them. And it was like an absolute joy. Like, obviously, I knew Storm from previous like movies and stuff. Again, I knew Forge from Marvel Snap and knew nothing of his backstory. So to get more of that, loved every second of it. Kind of wish there was more. He's a total badass. I would have loved to see so much more from him, but it's fine. We had to deal with the love dodecahedron that was happening in the other plots. It's fine. And then Jubilee and Sunspot. Again, two characters I only know from Marvel Snap, but I adore them. I felt
which
so. Huh?
now I was gonna say, would you believe you've seen Sunspot before in a movie that we reviewed?
I mean, yeah. I've seen Sunspot for like 0.2 seconds.
Because I forgot. I was like, oh yeah, we did watch that movie.
We did. I fell so in love with Jubilee in this show. And like the first second I saw her, I was like, I think I'm gonna like her. I think she's gonna be my fave. And I was right. She is such a joy and so incredible and badass and fun and sparkly. And we love that for her. But my man Roberto, just everything he does is like so like he has these like great like deep like emotional moments, but everything that comes out of his mouth is so funny. Like that dude is he's just trying to have a good time. Like he's in a shitty situation, life's going like all over the place for him, and he's just there to like make quips and have fun, you know?
JJ, your thoughts on him?
Yeah, one of my favorite lines in the whole show comes from Jubilee when she says, it's in the last set of episodes where she says, "I'm so done with malls."
Yeah.
I love that.
Being a reference to when they found Jubilee in the first series at the mall with the Sentinels, she's just like, "I'm so done with malls." So it's just like one of the best, like the show's ability to reference other X-Men properties for both the original series and movies. I mean, maybe the best line in the whole show is when Scott Summers is like, "What did you expect? Expect black leather?" Just completely ripping off the line from the live-action movies. But no, Jubilee also has a special place in my heart. Especially for that line, but the character in general, and the way that they allowed the character to grow up. She's 18 now. She's an adult. And
Adult.
having her have that moment with the older Jubilee who'd like gone through the video game over and over and over again, and she was like, "We can do that now," and then watch her do that, what the little spin disc throw. And then watching her do that in the final big fight against Magneto, and it was just a moment of like, yeah.
Joe, another character from Marvel Snap.
Jubilee being the point of view character in the original series was a touchstone for sure, because she was our age, the people watching it, the kids watching it, and for them to be introduced and then bringing in, of course, DaCosta into it, I think just made sense from her perspective of being the latest member of the team, now introducing to the new kid. I thought that was just excellent. I wish that they had a little more time. I will say though, their episode, specifically their breakdown of the Nintendo, the actual so first of all, as a dork who plays video games and loves that era, and little name is Mario based off of that video game.
What is a video game? Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. But of course, they literally have the same graphics as the original like beat 'em up X-Men, which was insane that they did that. On top of that, the color swap Sentinels were also awesome, and I'm just like, man, they know they understand the subject, they understand the material, and they know exactly what they're going for. And then obviously referencing other stuff throughout. That was awesome. I'm so happy that exists.
So incredible. I love getting to see like, you know, the kids having their moment where they really can like prove their competency, but also just having the like fun like computer graphics, like really reminiscent of those nostalgic games. The Nintendo, hilarious, and then to see how it like we reference the danger room throughout the series, but for them to like really get to like play around with their skills in this like video game style and then to apply them later was just so brilliant. Yeah, such a fun time.
Not to mention the second video game moment was, of course, Rogue doing her moves from fucking Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which was sick. But yeah, digress. JJ, you were saying?
There's another. There's something I thought was really interesting about Sunspot, which is comparing Sunspot to Angel, and how they have not similar backs. There's a comparable backstory of these being the heirs to incredibly wealthy fortunes, both of them being mutants, and like the way that their families approach their child being a mutant. Of course, Angel, his father tries to like fix him and all.
In general, fuck that dude.
And trying to like leading the charge against mutant kind. And then DaCosta, her having like, there's a really interesting when we think about both of these characters as metaphors for coming out, and of this like immediate acceptance, a mother knows, but then also of like, well, no one can know. Like we have to keep this under wraps.
Like, we have to, it's the family, like.
So I think there's a really interesting comparison between those two characters in the two series, and then also just at large, and how they approach them, and how coming out has changed between between these times that these two character stories have told, but like how attitudes have not necessarily, like the way that families can show their homophobia has sometimes changed, or their internalization of that. And I thought, like, at first when that scene started happening, I was like, oh, that's so interesting that they're doing this where she like knew she was waiting, like it was like, this is exactly how you deal when your child comes out to you, and then 30 seconds later this is exactly how you don't deal with your child coming out to you. And it was I thought it was kind of like a really brilliant little twist on it, and something that has that touchstone to one of the most famous X-Men of all time.
Yeah, I think it was definitely an updated version of, if you remember, in X2, where that scene with Bobby gets pretty much lauded for similar feelings. And then this definitely, I would say, gives it that extra weight of it. She understands, she knows, but then also you have to hide it. Like, right? Like there's that extra element to it. When it came to sort of generally the queerness of the show, I think ultimately they really did a great emphasis of showing almost every facet that you could possibly go through, whether it being acceptance, betrayal, awful, like the society aspects of it. Like they really go through different lights to really shine through. And then some of it is, very blatant on screen, and some of it also is subtext, but I do find they find a great way of being able to present that to a general audience. Makes it very much of its time.
I mean, if you're an X-Men, you're kind of gay. Like, you're at least a little gay. So, like, if you're an X-Men, you're a little gay. Like, there's no other way to say it. You're at least a little gay.
Cable, straightest man in the world. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm big guns, big macho. Doesn't like to get lathered up. I don't know.
I mean, can you be the child of Scott and Jean Grey and not turn out a little fruity? Like, I don't know.
I don't know, man.
Wild mommy and daddy issues, just to like.
Yeah, and I think he's like trying so hard to not be his parents, and his parents are like the fruitiest swingers in the world, and so he's like,
They-
I will not.
Can I get a fish in the fishbowl? No, you cannot get a fish in the fishbowl. The fishbowl's for something else. Okay, so we briefly talked about Storm. I did want to bring up Storm a little bit more because Storm has somewhat of an interesting arc, going from losing her powers to sort of redefining herself. What did you think about the Storm aspects of the season? By the way, shout out to the voice actress, which of course is the original returning. She fucking kills it. It gives it her all in every scene. Just an absolute queen. Sly, this is your introduction to this Storm, which is my Storm. What do you think of our version of Aurora?
I adored her. I loved her so much. I loved this like sisterhood with her and Jean, and I guess technically Madeline too. Who fucking where did they switch? Who cares? All right, but this sisterhood that is so deep and so like it the X-Men is all about found family, right? And this is such a running theme throughout all of these stories. But to see these connections be so impactful to both members and for it to be such a familial bond isn't something we see super explicitly. So to have that moment between them was so beautiful. To have that conversation of like her being like, I would like to know what it's like to be human, like what it's all about, and then to like lose her powers in a devastating way. And I think that's something a lot of people can relate to. I think at some point in all of our lives we lose something, an aspect of our identity, something that like was like we were like that person, and then we lose that for whatever reason. And to watch her like grapple with it, learn to try to accept it, and then decide to make steps to get that power back and redefine her relationship with her powers and what that means for her as a character. I thought it was beautifully handled. I loved every time she opened her mouth. Like it was just incredible. And then to be, partnered with Forge, which I mentioned before, I thought his character was so brilliant. I wanted so much more for him. Everything like that they hinted and dropped about, like this version of this character, like what his story is. I was like eating that up. I wanted everything, and to see the way they played off of each other was just so fun. And like I don't know, I absolutely adored them. I think those like two together, their storyline might be my favorite like arc in the show.
JJ, your thoughts on the storyline with Storm and Forge?
I also really loved it. I just thought it was. I think the thing with Storm is she is one of the few. There's what, 4 Omega level mutants that are in this show?
Yeah.
Jean Grey, Magneto. No, Professor X isn't Omega level anymore. So there's only 3: Jean Grey, Magneto, and Storm. And when you have stuff like,
could you define that? Not me.
yes,
Class.
Okay, cool. Sure. An Omega level mutant is someone who is designated as having no upper limit to their mutation or their power.
All right, cool.
Which there used to be a whole like designation Omega, Alpha, Beta, like all the different like levels of power. The most important one is Omega, and everyone at one point used to be an Omega level mutant, and then they like really scaled it down, and so there's only like a handful of it, like a much more manageable, can fit on a piece of paper. It used to be everybody was an Omega level mutant, no longer. And so, but not as only is she an Omega level mutant, like she has no upper limit to her ability to control the weather. But she is one of the best fighters. Like it's always and she has like this aura around her now as a character about how powerful she is. And throughout the show, they keep that up by everyone referring to her as a goddess. Like even amongst the X-Men, she is held above all others. Even Magneto, who is also a Omega level mutant and arguably one of the most, if not the most powerful mutants there are, is also just like, you are the closest thing to a goddess that there is. So it's really interesting about like, what do you do with a character who can, on some level, solve every problem and can overpower whatever she comes across. Like, how do you have her in this group, structurally speaking, in the story when she's just so overpowered in that way, in like a
The answer is
storytelling
to
way.
nerf her for the
And
majority of the story.
yeah, a lot of times it's you nerf a character and you send them off, and like it's a tried old tale of I don't, you guys know it, a tried old tale,
Yes.
something along those lines. Tried and true. That's what it is. A tried and true tale. That's what I was looking for. There we go.
I think you were trying to combine tried and true and tale as old as time. That's the two phrases I
Beauty and the Beast.
I was trying to say something. Something came out. My
Words
rogue
are
almost started
happening.
coming out there. And so they did nerf her, and they sent her off on her own like quest of like self-discovery. But what I really liked was that it was actually really easy for her to like technically regain her powers. It was a like she came across Forge, he built a machine, her powers were reinstated, but she had a mental block that she didn't even know that she had. She thought it just didn't work. So that was I thought the fun part of it is like watching her work through the, like you said, redefining her relationship with her powers. And that the important part of her story was about not only redefining her relationship with her powers, but using that to also redefine her relationship with the X-Men themselves.
There was so much about that interpersonal connection with like herself and the team. I thought that was so brilliant.
And then so it just makes it so devastating when we see Storm watch what happens on Genosha. And like we watch her find out, and that's the moment where it's just like, oh God, we just watched you go through this horrific, like this epic, like inner turmoil, and you finally overcame it, only to see that in a lot of ways you're a little too late because you weren't there
Your
to do
people
anything
are
to
like
help.
massacred. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like a really epic. I love that about Storm, because if Storm is there, why isn't Storm leading the team? Like, why isn't Storm solving the problem? Like, and even when Storm is there, she's already acting as a mediator. She's already the powerhouse. She's already all of these things at the beginning and the end of the series. So it's just like, what do you do with her in the meantime? That's meaningful and works, and makes sense for her. And so it was delightful.
Yeah, I very much was into the idea of the series. obviously having to have some stakes of someone losing their powers for it to be Storm, for me, hurt because, I was happy that the voice actress was going to have her do, and I thought that they were actually writing her out of the show entirely. I was very thankful that we did have, specific moments where we could have with her and how she, overcrossed adversity, literally with the character name, the adversary, which, what were your thoughts on that manifestation? Like that to me was the weakest part of it, but that's just me.
I love the design because I love that design of the demonic owl bird.
Mm-hmm.
Just in general, like we saw it in Avatar. You can see it in Owl House. I love the design in Owl House.
Yes, Owl House.
I love Owl House.
Bring back Owl House.
Oh, sorry, I did not. I missed that.
You're good.
No, I said bring back Owl House because that sure deserves more.
Bring back Owl House.
Another amazing gay show as well.
So whenever I see that design, I always get really excited because I feel like it's underutilized. I did think that was the adversary's dialogue. I feel like was like some of the weaker dialogue amongst the villains of the story. But I just got really excited once I saw a creepy bird.
Yeah, I think story-wise, like the narrative with the adversary and the dialogue, like you mentioned, it definitely wasn't the like most captivating or like strongest of the show. But that design was so funky. We love a creepy, funky bird. So like that like got me through it, right? I was like, oh, we're haunted by like the demons of our past. And it's a creepy bird demon that's attacking you. Like that's fun. I didn't really like feel super invested in like the narrative or the dialogue that was happening around the adversary, but I think yeah, like JJ said, it was a fun design and it was a cool look and those fights were fun, so like it was good enough.
I also really loved, and it just that moment stuck with me beforehand, and I knew as soon as the moment happened what was about to happen. But like when they are riding their horses and they go up to the cliffside, and you see the bird circling, and as soon as that bird came on that screen, I was like, I know exactly what's about to happen, and I cannot wait for that bird to become a villain, and it did, and I was like, yes, it did. But there was something about that shot, the composition of the shot, where it was like. It drew it was subtle, but it still drew your attention to the fact that it was there. And I was just like, that's good story. That's good visual foreshadowing right there.
Which, funny you brought that up. I'm happy you said that because did you catch the cameo that shows up actually in the Genosha episode? There's a little cameo in the sky by The Watcher is watching.
No, I completely missed that.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So The Watcher...
That's a horrible TV show.
Season 2 is pretty good. But yeah, The Watcher is actually in the sky watching the event of Genosha happen. So there's your connection to the MCU.
It's all connected.
Now, will those characters...
Let's not forget that Stan Lee is in Princess Diaries, the Princess Diaries franchise. So, we were talking about Genovia and Anne Hathaway,
Why? Why is he there?
He makes his Stan Lee cameo.
Hilarious. Yeah.
All right. It's true.
Right. If you haven't seen
Mia Thermopolis is an MCU hero. Is a superhero.
Shout out to when we get to the third one eventually, hopefully shortly. We're getting Freaky Friday too, so why not? I guess the last major X-Men, of course, is Beast. Beast doesn't really get a whole lot in this. He does get a kind of girlfriend, and then that goes very south very quick.
So lied about him having terrible taste in women.
Logan being the person to say that out of all people, too.
Just
I was like, really, dude?
Just dig it in there. Of course, Beast being another one of those. This is my favorite depiction of Beast. When I sort of saw a version of there's a combination of both Kelsey Grammer and this version in the Marvels. I was very happy to see how he kind of influenced to me the look of what Beast should be. So hopefully that continues on. But it was nice to have him. He was just sort of hanging. Like, he didn't really have, in my opinion.
That's the thing, is like, Hank didn't really have a storyline, but he was an active participant.
Yes, he was.
Everybody else's. He was such a great support character, and for him to be like one of the very few characters that I actually felt like I knew pretty well.
Yeah, you do, don't you? Yeah.
It really helped me as somebody who wasn't familiar with the original show, and I'm coming into this only having seen, like the live action movies. For me to be like, okay, I know Hank. Hank is a constant. Hank is reliable, and he is a touch point in every single one of these stories. And kind of the piece tying all of these branchy storylines together. Like, he's really like the heart and the center of this show in a way that I think. I mean, I haven't engaged with any of the discussion of the show, but I feel like could easily go unnoticed how he really is like the core of the show.
Sure.
And so like I said, as somebody who he was one of the very few characters that I actually felt like headed deep in understanding of who he is and what his character is, to not really need like a big backstory from him, and just to have him as that grounding focal point as we go off to some fucking alien princess race fighting the Kree. I don't know what was going on to them. We got multiple genes, we got dodecahedron love stories going on, we got two characters fucking off, we have teens in a mall. I'm but Hank is steady.
Hank has one of my favorite scenes in the show. Sly, you were talking about earlier about how this show it demonstrates how to have certain conversations in real life, and it's really two scenes back to back that I thought were just after Genosha gets attacked. When the reporter comes down and Hank greets her, and he's like, "I'm glad it's you being the one to do this." It's a really touching moment. She sends away the camera. They walk off by themselves. A really touching moment. And then it goes off to somewhere else. And then it goes to them having the conversation, and having their moment. And it's the first time really I think one of the only times in the whole show where Hank kind of has this big emotional moment and calls her out for how she is approaching the situation, and how the conversation is going. And it's one of those moments where we just the episode before we watched Scott get emotional, but Scott is always emotional. And or we watch
feelings, okay?
He has lots of feelings. But we watch a lot of these characters have their moment, and there's usually something else going on around it. And in this moment is kind of that he and this reporter have some sort of deeper connection. So there's kind of that context about it, but really Hank is like you said, is the glue that's holding all these storylines together, which a lot of that has to do with also the overarching story about acceptance versus tolerance versus the eradication of this group of people. And that is is all solidified in that one conversation. And I thought it was really beautifully done. And then he leaves, he marches off and he leaves the conversation. It was power move, Hank.
Power move. He's such a badass.
God, I love me some Hank McCoy. And then we, of course, have the extended sort of one episode really is just trying to get through whatever the hell Xavier is doing. Xavier in space, which that to me was a lot to take, because as someone who has watched the original series, I know of their ties with the Shi'ar Empire. that's definitely not some of my favorite aspects. I actually have never seen the end of the original series because of how the structure of how it was coming out on television. So to find out that he just fucked off to space, did not know that was the case. Did love the little cameos of like a lot of the sort of like spacefaring like characters, like Ronan the Conqueror, not the Conqueror, Destroyer, right? Yes, Ronan Destroyer from Guardians of the Galaxy, who was also in the
Marvel stuff. Okay. Yeah.
Marvel Snap character.
Yeah. No, as somebody who did not see any of the original show, the whole Charles in space, it was definitely a tough one to follow, to grapple with, to understand. I was like, why is your brother a madman? You're never gonna tell me. Like, who is the like sister who wants to destroy everything? Don't really know, but like, I guess she's here. Who is this like council? What's going on? Like, why are they like space colonists? Like, why is Charles in love with this lady? Like, none of those questions were answered, were posed. You were just supposed to like, I guess they assumed you knew who these people were and had feelings about them. They didn't really tell me. Like, I didn't like any of them. Even like the betrothed, I was like, fuck this lady. Like, who cares about her? But like, I don't know. I felt like they were trying to make me care about her. But I'm like, you've given me nothing to work on. I don't even know like who your people are, other than you're in a battle against the Kree, which usually the Kree, I guess, are the bad guys. So like, fair enough. But also, you're like space colonists and destroying like quote unquote lesser worlds. So like, fuck you. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, that to me was one of the more rougher aspects of the episode. Well, just very much because it's just something that I wasn't following. I'm very much closer tied to the team. But when we take that sort of journey, luckily it is intercut with other stuff going on Earth, so I did appreciate that. The big scene, though, of course, of Professor X sort of doing the sort of mind meld of like bringing everybody other, bring him into terms that make it understands to him by putting him in a classroom, like all of that, I did find quite fun, and the way that we're all sitting behind desks. But then it ending with that big crescendo of like Gambit being a skeleton, like that was like, oh man, that definitely hits. For him then to come back, I mean, his reintroduction, and then really the culmination of like the final half of the season, which of course is like him having to deal with the fact that he left and this has all happened, and Cyclops is now questioning some of his beliefs, and all that culminating to obviously, which the final part of this that I want to talk about is the bad guys. Is the bad guys we touched upon them, but like to me they are a central part to what guides us through the story as well. Mr. Sinister, and then of course Bastion, which is the big bad of the whole season. What were your thoughts on their inclusion throughout the show, as well as the characters themselves? I'm actually going to start with JJ on this one.
When Sinister got brought up first, I was like, oh, cool. I love Sinister. I hate Sinister, but I love Sinister. And at first I was like, wait, is Sinister actually going to be the secret big bad? And then I was like, that's interesting. And I almost wish he was. But it, of course, it then really turned out to be Bastion. But I think Sinister is always really just really fun, and I thought that they animated him really interestingly. And his whole thing with Jean Grey, that whole thing, and the manipulation of Cable and Madeline Pryor and all things. I think he makes the most fun choices. And I guess that's what really it is. It's never the main villain who's actually interesting. It's the main villain's right-hand man. Like, no one actually cares about the Emperor. We're all about Darth Vader. Like, Darth Vader's interesting, and then so to me, it was kind of like that balance where Bastion, I think he's way more interesting than the Emperor was. But like, the one who was really interesting to me was the deranged weirdo of Sinister. So that was really fun. And then of course Bastion has just like some wild lines in his last bits of existence. Just some truly amazing, awful one-liners that were just like chef's kiss.
So we've had inklings towards Mr. Sinister whenever we watch like Logan or the New Mutants and stuff like that, but we never got him in live action. What is this is your first introduction to this character other than Marvel Snap? Your introduction to the character?
Unfortunately, yeah. I think Marvel Snap really colored how I viewed this character because he's kind of like a not very useful card in Marvel Snap, so I kind of just wrote him off for the majority of the show. And then, like, as we get to the back half and like especially those last couple episodes, I'm like, oh, I guess this dude is actually pretty powerful. But the whole time I'm just like whatever. He's like not a super like. At least in my play style. Like I never like. I don't think I even have him in a single like deck right now. I'm like whatever. So yeah, I really dismissed him. I think I needed to know a lot more about him to like really get like a connection with Mr. Sinister, and so I feel like if you had that connection to the original, you might like feel more strongly about him.
One thing I will say is Bo DeMaio on Twitter would actually give homework for people that were getting ready for the next episode. It's like, all right, these are the episodes you should watch if you want to be keyed into this episode.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so he did every week he did. He actually gave like, hey, you should check these specific ones. This is what I pulled from.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I like that. We love homework on this show. But yeah, I think it was really interesting. We see what like 4 villains over the course of these 10 episodes.
roughly.
We have yeah, we have fucking
Trash.
Bolivar Trash.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of like the science dude. And then we have Mr. Sinister, and then we have Bastion, who I had no clue who the fuck this dude was. I think the fact that he's a mutant, how his powers manifest, is really interesting. And him like manipulating the Sentinels, which were freaky as all hell. And then we get a glimpse at our boy. Notably my favorite X-Men movie. That hint at apocalypse at the end there really did a lot for me.
Oh, because you primarily know him as the one from the Apocalypse movie. That's right.
Listen, I had a lot of strong feelings about that movie. I mostly joke. We all know First Class is my favorite X-Men movie, but Apocalypse was up there, and that was like one of my hottest takes on SC University. So go check out that episode. We had a great time.
I think for Bastion's stake, at the very least, like he was a character that I know pretty much nothing. I've never read any of the comics of this specific ilk. To be honest, I actually did not know that the Sentinels went past their giant, purple boots, redhead, like part of like their main design that you see. I actually did not know they go past with Master Mold and then the Prime Sentinels and then Nimrod, which of course gets a mention in this as well. And then, which are apparently all touchstones, obviously from the original series, which if you were, rewarded for watching that as a new viewer, this was all, some of this stuff was still new to me.
Master Mold and Nimrod are also Marvel Snap
characters. They are Marvel Snap characters. They're very well in some of my decks for sure. But when it came to like obviously getting to the deeper Sentinels and them being involved in the season, I was actually kind of like taken aback. It's like, oh wow, there's a lot more to these things than I gave credit for. I just thought that they were just these automatons.
Sentinels were fucking terrifying. Like
yes,
the whole like they can like biologically reproduce. They're these like humans that have been like implanted with this nanotechnology. Like everything going on with that, freaky. It was freaky.
Which allowed for some really, if you think about it too hard, there's some dark ass episodes of how Wolverine just cuts up so many of them and just does some insane moves.
So powerful. They completely destroy like the mansion and like all of these different locations, and like what can you do until Eric fucking freezes the world of all technology, which a choice, but I support his wrongs.
Oh my god. In terms of where the show is gonna go, now that we've have seemingly half, if not most of the cast is traveling into what seems to be two different time periods, where you're both in the future and also in the past. I mean, this show can go in so many directions. I mean, JJ, as anyone has an inkling to any of the previous history, where do you see these characters going? Where do you see them ending up after we come back to them? Or where would you like to explore? Because there's a lot. Because also we have Young Cable again.
Yeah, now we have Young Cable. I think that's got to be top of the list of things to explore. I think who knows who's going to be writing and show running this show next season?
Yeah.
I don't know if they announced who is replacing.
Apparently, a lot of it is written and already dictated, so like it's already kind of set. Bo has some involvement in terms of what was already done, so they're already like in the animation stage. So that's gonna be. I think we're gonna be pretty okay with season 2 in terms of like somewhat of the same flow. But once we get into later seasons, that's when it's gonna start getting a little different. So we'll see.
We'll definitely see. I think that's the thing that throws me the biggest for the loop. The biggest for the loop. I don't know. Words are not happening right now. That's what's throwing me for the biggest loop. I think is what he seems to be doing is just picking the best, most interesting stories for each of these characters and making them work in 3 to 4 episodes, basically. So I think Young Cable, I think would be really interesting. I'm excited to see who is pulled from the roster of the hundreds of thousands of X-Men. I know on the wall we had like the list of who Forge was going through. So I'm really interested to see who they pull up, because they've kind of got. So where's Kitty Pryde? Like, let's we know where Kitty Pryde is. But like, there's a whole roster of people that they could pull from, especially because we also have a time traveler in the midst as well. But yeah, I think where I want to see the show go is just like, let's continue doing the greatest hits, and doing it really, really well in a really truncated way. And let's keep throwing in some new, interesting X-Men, and have fun with them and throw them in different situations. Like I don't really have a need for like exactly where the show is going to go, because like they got my trust out of season 1.
That's fair. Sly?
I want some more obscure Marvel Snap characters. Give me cards I know. Love to see it. But no, seriously, I was really intrigued by how they ended that season and like what they'll do going forward. I really hope they go like the Eternals route and do a true non-linear story and just like give us these glimpses of these characters, give us this like really encapsulated like moment in time and tell a compelling narrative in that moment in time, and then jump to a completely different, like seemingly disconnected, and then watch like as the story plays out across the season. I think that would be really fun and beautiful. I think it'd be cool. I don't think they will do this because I think they really enjoy being able to jump around within the episodes themselves, but I thought it would be cool if we see like every single episode is just in one time period, and you spend the whole episode in that time period, and then we don't revisit it. Like, we just jump around to these moments of time and see how these narratives play out and how the X-Men affect like the times they are in. I think that would be fun. Again, I don't think that's how they're going to handle this story, but like, a guy can dream, right?
Yeah, I mean, the future is truly unwritten for the characters, as they can do so many different things. Other than, I think I've been hearing, the theories. We've actually been talking about this months after the show has been over. People have been ruminating on ideas. There's a lot of talk, obviously, with Abin Sur being introduced with Apocalypse, that they're going to be bringing in Age of Apocalypse stuff, which I guess involves Gambit in some aspect. So I'm curious how they can handle that, because I felt the weight, and I think that kind of needs to stick. And if you're able to bring that character back in a way that's going to hurt, or at the very least, still have that weight, I'll give you faith. You got my attention. I'm hoping that they're able to handle that. But now with Bo DeMaio obviously separated from the series, who knows past the second season on how they handle that. My main thing is I hope that this show lasts long enough that we get to X-Men 2000. I think that would be hilarious if we go into the 2000s and start exploring tropes there. But ultimately, yeah, I'm just so happy that X-Men is back, and it's in the form that I think is its truest form, and that the whole nother generation can discover it now that we're probably going to be inundated with a whole slew of new X-Men titles and movies that are going to be, on the horizon. And, but yeah, no, I'm just happy that X-Men's back. Yeah,
Absolutely. I also agree. My hottest take is that superheroes should always be told in 30-minute increments, 30 to 40-minute increments. That's all. Like, it should be a television show, 30 to 40-minute increments. That's it. We don't need these 10 episode, hour-long episode, like hour and 15-minute episodes for every episode. It's not even 10 episodes, it's like 6 episodes. We don't need movies are great, but like, best superhero stories are always told in like 30 to 40 minutes of television per episode.
I respectfully disagree. I love a tight 70. Like, a tight 70-minute movie is incredible. It's perfect. You can
I
tell
like how we moved
whole
from a tight
storyline.
90 down to a tight 70. We went from a tight 90 to a tight 70.
Meanwhile, Electra
Okay.
feels like 3 hours long.
Yeah, okay, listen, I love a tight 90. I've been watching a lot of 70-minute movies recently, for no particular reason. You might hear something about that later. But I've been watching a lot of, like, 70-minute made-for-TV movies. And they are perfect, and they are brilliant, and they're just bite-sized enough, but you get a full character arc, you get a full storyline in them, and I think they are the perfect encapsulation of superhero media. I love a TV show. Like, I think you're right when we're talking about television itself. These like 30, I want to say 22 to 30-minute episodes really is the sweet spot. Once you get over 30 minutes, I'm like, you could have just made it an hour. Like, either trim or like give me more. But yeah, I love, like, when we're looking at like superhero, especially animated television, those like 22 to 30-minute episodes really are like everything you need to tell these stories.
I was trying to give room for live action, like hour long. Like, I was trying to give room for Smallville, because I think Smallville is
Okay.
one of the greatest
Valid.
superheroes.
Make an
Like,
exception
so
for
30
Smallville,
to
yeah.
40, like 40-minute. Like, I
Yeah.
want to make room for Smallville, because it's still
Valid.
it's yet to be topped in my in my opinion. But yeah, the 22, basically just like television. It's a great format, people. Why are we trying to get rid of it?
Oh man, there's still so much more that we could talk about. We didn't even talk about the cameos from the other.
I was just looking at my notes. We didn't talk about Steve showing up twice.
No,
Chaka makes his appearance in
Yeah.
the UN conversation.
Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
My touchstone, which was incredible, the freaking Amazing Spider-Man from the 90s cartoon showing up not once but twice. Also, thank you, Boda Mayo, for giving us closure. For people who do not know, that series ends on a cliffhanger where Mary Jane is like lost in time, and that's all that show ever ended. And this show shows that yes, Peter did in fact find her. Thank God. So yes, thank you for that, and please bring that show back too. If this is doing numbers, that will do numbers. So please give us. Except of course they have their freshman series that's coming out. It's like
A year or whatever.
yeah, cancel that. Just give me the other one. Just get whatever. just it is what it is. I want to thank, of course, the two of you for being here for one of our first PIP lives. Of course, Sly, co-host over at Point in Progress. I want to, if you could, give everyone where they can find you, and then your final thoughts.
Yeah. Final thoughts. This was fun. I'm really glad that we made content about it, so it forced me to actually watch the show because I don't think I would have watched this of my own volition. But I had a great time, and I'm glad I've seen it and can kind of connect to such a historic show that so many people know and love so dearly. So yeah, I had a great time. I can't wait to see the future of the couple characters that I really latched onto throughout this viewing experience. But yeah, of course, you can find me here on Point in Progress. You can find Mario and I created a really cool show called MC University, which we've referenced many a times. We have an episode about Electra with JJ on it. But I really, truly love that show. I think it's one of the best things I've ever done. And I've been really nostalgic. I've been going back and watching those old episodes, and we are funny. Like we had a great time. I think we've made great content. But the other show that I do that I love so dearly is, of course, Thirsty Thursday. We'll be back next week. JJ and I get drunk and yell about 911, pop culture, whatever TV shows we're forcing the other to watch. So right now we're making our way through Siren Survived the Island, which Mario we watched for Pip back in the day. And then I am watching Hunter x Hunter for the first time. So, it's been a fun time. So you can check out JJ and my lives over on we'll throw the After Party YouTube at After Party SHO. But yeah, you can find me there, and you can find me on Pip. And you can find Mario and I on future MC University episodes. We have 2 episodes scheduled this year. It's gonna be real fun. We're really excited about it.
JJ, your final thoughts, and then where people can find you.
Yeah, real glad to be here. Real glad to be talking about X-Men. Really glad that that this show happened when it happened, and that people started a bunch of conversations. Some of those conversations are great, some of them were bad, but a lot of them were necessary.
I got people
so it was
talking,
really,
and that's important. Yeah.
yeah, and it's also great to just see a bunch of gays on television. That's just what I live for. And it also had just the perfect amount of fan service. It was just great. Hot Magneto, who we all knew we needed it from Michael Fassbender, but they just continued that legacy. So yeah, thanks for having me. You can find me on Thirsty Thursdays with Sly. I finally have someone that I have forced to watch Hunter x Hunter with, which has been the highlight of the past couple months for me, because it's been 2 years of me trying to get someone to watch it. And you can also find me on TikTok and on Twitter, because I refuse to call it its other name, at JJBWatch. And like I said, I did the Electra episode of MC University, and it's really funny to listen to them, listening to all the episodes. It's really funny to be on them. They're a great time to be on them. So yeah, that's where you can find me. That's what I do.
Fantastic. And of course, you can find me over there at the website known as formerly known as Twitter, at that Mario Rivera, where you'll see a lot of my machinations happening. Of course, you can find me here at Point in Progress, where we're doing Point in Progress live streams, including the things you're watching now. So again, thank you so much for supporting us, for being here in the chat, watching us later, and then of course, just generally being cool people. Again, I want to thank everyone that is here. My final thoughts, obviously, on X-Men. It's fucking great. Go watch it. That's my final thought. Go watch it. Don't stop. Get a free trial to Disney Plus. I don't care how else you see it. Just watch it. That's all I'll say about that. Also, check out the Acolyte. I think it's fine. I think people are crying too much about it personally. But that's just my personal hot take. Again, thank everyone here in the chat. Thank everybody for watching. We're going to go ahead and take off and say goodnight. But thank you all for being here, and goodbye.
Bye.